Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism. My name is Nick Laporte. This is a podcast about urbanism and stuff. And today we've got a bunch of stuff we're going to be talking about. Automated bike lane enforcement, Republicans opposing Vision Zero, and some goodies coming from Sully, it sounds like. So please welcome to the show, Sully Israel.
Hi, everybody.
And we also have in the other chair, Ethan Myers.
It's great to be back here, folks. I'm ready here for another great show about urbanism.
Absolutely. By the way, we didn't do a regular show last week. We just put in an interview between Sully and Peter Norton. He is the author of Fighting Traffic. It was actually really good. I listened to it while I was working, and what a great conversation. That guy is just like overflowing with knowledge. It's wild. When did you record that?
I recorded that. That must have been in February, or no, it was in January, because it was the week of the 100th anniversary of the LA traffic ordinance. Yeah. And I had, it's kind of cool because obviously I read history books and watch YouTube videos and stuff, but I'd never actually gone so far down the rabbit hole where I met a guy who, is actually finding the history. Like he went to the Nixon library the Herbert Hoover library and unearthed the letters between his staff. He's like finding the new information. And that was so cool. And where he's reading original drafts of speeches about pedestrian safety, from 1925. Yeah, follow him on LinkedIn. He actually, just before the show, I looked at a LinkedIn post of his where he found an old newspaper clipping of chains that were put up along sidewalks in Rochester to try and stop people from crossing the street in the 1920s. So he's constantly posting new interesting stuff on LinkedIn.
It's incredible. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about it later in the show, but first we're going to start with the story they got here. This is coming out of Sacramento, so this is pretty cool. Excuse me. Sacramento has become the first U.S. city to implement automated bike lane enforcement cameras mounted on city buses, and it's in partnership with the Sacramento Regional Transit, which is, what do you call it?
SAC-RT.
SAC-RT. So 100 buses are going to be equipped with this AI-powered front-facing cameras from Hayden AI to detect illegally parked cars in the bike lanes. And I think this is something that's kind of been in the works for a while. I think I saw a story back in, 2022 or 21 or something about this. This company's been working towards this for a while. So it's really cool to see it being actually implemented. So the system captures video, photos, and location data for review with violation processing handled by Duncan Solutions. And the goal is to improve road safety, of course, and protect cyclists by keeping bike lanes clear. So warnings began on April 14th, and fines will be issued starting June 13th, just over a month away, 5 weeks from now, which is pretty awesome. I feel like this is something where we can, this is a test case where they're going to see if this actually works, how much this will actually help keep cars out of the bike lane. That's what I want to see. How well is this going to work? What do you guys think? Do you think this is going to be helpful? Is it actually going to get people to not park in the bike lanes?
I wonder first two things. What percentage of bike lanes are along a bus route? Because obviously the ones that aren't on bus routes are not going to get the benefit of it. And then also, I'm trying to picture what type of bike lanes people are parking in. Because if it's a class 2 between the driving lane and the parking lane, I don't know why people are maybe they're not parallel parking close enough to the curb because at least where I live, I rarely see that. And then if it's a class 4 that's separated between the curb and the parked cars, then maybe that's where people are, if it's not separated enough. Or
I think there's a lot of double parking that's happening. I went on Street View about a week ago, kind of looked into it, see what kind of bike lanes are going on in Sacramento, and it looks like they've been upgraded. Some of it, like some of these Street View stuff is old, but it looked like they have a lot of door zone bike lanes, so a lot of double parking, Ubers or delivery people or whoever parking in bike lanes like that. I think those are the ones that are mostly going to be dinged for it. Whether or not it's going to keep people out, I don't know. I don't know. It's something we'll have to find out.
Sacramento's been doing some good work to build up its bike infrastructure. It still has a lot of very car-dependent streets. But, we can't even doubt the effectiveness of these cameras when it comes to the bus routes and bus lanes. They've shown to be a huge success. But with the bike lanes, I think Sully brought up a really good point. How many of these routes even parallel bus lines? Because if we're not seeing a whole lot of paralleling there and we're not seeing a whole lot of overlap, then we're going to be seeing maybe these buses not really getting as many violations caught as they should be, and just seeing bike lanes still being blocked. But I think they really should focus at least on getting those bus lanes and especially their light rail lanes clear, because in downtown Sacramento, a lot of their light rail does share their track space with car lanes. And there's even sections where the tracks run right next to parking spots. I've witnessed this in person, where trains have been blocked by a parked car that is not parked in close enough. And it quite literally backs up the whole transit network. So, I mean, it's a great idea to get those cameras on the buses themselves. But
yeah,
I think maybe the priority for these is for the bus lanes, and I think the bike lanes are more or less an added-on addition rather to the system rather than being the priority.
Yeah, and I think a key part to this and to actually make a difference is what those funds go to. We don't want to end up in a situation where it's like pork barrel politics, where this is just funding a bigger and bigger budget rather than actually trying to fix the problem. Like that's what we had here in Vancouver, which was proposed was a lot more speed and red light cameras around the city. It ultimately got shot down, or at least something that needed to be studied further. But the whole proposition was that, hey, this money that's going to be garnered from these cameras is going to go to improve the intersection, improve the conditions. So red light running and speeding is reduced in the end from the design, which I think is really key for a lot of these things when it comes with enforcement, which is not the case in so many places. It's just as a way for garnishing revenue for the city. So I don't know.
That reminds me of the hot take. I think that it was Chuck Marone, the guy who started Strong Towns. He wrote about congestion pricing, and he was like, good idea, but in his opinion, the underlying issue with MTA is that they are bad at managing money. So giving them more is actually not so great, And I was like, okay, it's interesting.
I didn't like. I listened to that podcast that he had to talk about that, and I did not like the take. I respect him very much, but that's one of the things I was like, sorry, Chuck. This money's going right to actual improvements to help them make the system better. I don't know. Like I saw where he was coming from, but I don't know. I didn't agree with it.
You don't think MTA is horrible with managing their funds, then, is what you're saying?
That's a whole nother thing. Everybody's bad with managing funds. That's what I've seen, but I don't know enough about it. What do you think, Ethan? Maybe you know a little bit about that? I don't know.
I'm not too versed with MTA's financial, offerings, but I will say that, restricting funding for transit generally doesn't do much good for an agency in terms of telling them to get their stuff together. In fact, usually it just sort of gets services cut. Yeah. But at the end of the day, screaming fiscal responsibility is only going to get you so far. Of course, you can still keep, doing financial audits on these agencies to make sure that they're doing their job. But taking away funding at the end of the day from public transit, which is something that's already starved. Even the MTA is still scraping for money most of the time. Making sure that these agencies are well funded is a good thing, and making sure that they have additional revenue sources like this is great because it also helps subsidize other ridership programs as well too, like reduced fares and stuff like that. With new funds from this, they can offer more expanded reduced fares and offer better service as well too. At the end of the day, if there's less bus and bike lanes that are blocked, you're going to get better ridership on your system.
Yeah, and I think, sorry not to linger on this too long, but this whole argument that you shouldn't give the MTA this money because of mismanagement is kind of lost in the fact that there's more reasons than just giving them money for something like that. That Pigouvian tax, the congestion pricing, and all the benefits that come with just adding that fee to getting into, Lower Manhattan. So anyway,
which is still around. I had a question for Ethan, by the way, about downtown Sacramento. If you know, because I've been talking with advocates in LA about side running BRT and advocating for it, but then obviously, do you know what the rules are? If someone's trying to parallel park and a train pulls around the corner, do they just immediately have to go, or can they keep attempting the parallel parking?
I am not too familiar with that. With that, I should honestly probably look more into that when it comes to parallel parking. So I can't give you a really definite answer when it comes to parallel parking when a train's coming. I would assume that I would assume that it probably comes down to the situation. In most cases, the driver is probably going to let you, the operator is probably going to let you finish parking. But let's think about this realistically. That shouldn't be happening at all. That's just honestly kind of a design flaw at the end of the day.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think if these are being reviewed, are you talking about cameras, Sully? Like camera enforcement?
Oh, if it was, because the other one I was thinking parallel parking, and also the other conversation I was having with people in LA is there's so many driveways, and often the driveways back up. So if you wanted to do a BRT with enforcement, where it's if you block the bus lane, you're getting a ticket. Well, what if someone is just trying to get into a driveway and they're like the next person and the bus comes up behind them? Do they have to keep going? Mm-hmm. Are they allowed to wait? And the bus gets stuck behind? Like because there are a lot of driveways like that in LA, especially where there are markets or something like that, where it backs out onto the street. So yeah, which is why it's better to just design your system where transit and cars are separate.
You have to design the conflict out of the system.
Yeah, especially if you're building a BRT network, you really don't want houses butting up right next to it. So, I mean, at least when you're talking about bus rapid transit. But yeah, these camera enforcement problems are going to be coming up. But I mean, at the end of the day, personally, I find it to be a general good for systems to have these sort of, automated ticketing enforcement systems. But that's for courts to fight it out. If the system issues you a ticket, it really comes down to the legal system, which isn't the best. It definitely not fun fighting a ticket, but we're going to have to figure out strategies and how to better manage this.
Yep.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, this is something that they're implementing here in Vancouver, at least with bus lane enforcement, which is really cool. I'm really excited for that stuff to roll out because it is a huge problem. But like you said, Sully, it's just about actually designing it out of the system. This conflict, that's huge. We got another story here. This is from Ethan. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this story comes to us from Pierce County, Washington, which is where Tacoma, Washington is. And they recently had a little bit of a county council vote that ended up passing narrowly in a 4-3 margin to provide $450,000 towards the county's Vision Zero map. Now, this was a program that was initially, a few years ago, fully supported by the entire council. But these three opposing members of this funding for this Vision Zero program argued that it was kind of a waste of money. And they all happen to be Republicans. So a little bit of a shock there, I know, to everybody.
What?
But, yeah, let's just pull up what they said here. But
as I say about Republicans, they want to protect you before you're born, but once you're out of your mom's womb, they don't care how you die.
The famous George Carlin quote there. But, it's $450,000. We're talking about some real efficiency and savings here. But one of the council members on this board mentioned in their statement that Vision Zero is founded on a false and dangerous assumption. This assumption that traffic fatalities in Pierce County are not primarily caused by criminal behavior, but instead can be remedied through minor regulatory changes and misdirected extravagant spending that benefits a handful of private interests at the expense of our citizens.
Wow.
He then later said Vision Zero has a broader agenda embedded into it, with the intention of trying to force our lower income citizens into public transportation, effectively restricting their agency and freedom of movement.
Holy shit.
This was a guy who initially voted for the study to happen a few years ago.
There's a lot to unpack there. Like, who are the interests?
Can you say projection? Holy crap, that's insane. What's he thinking?
Wild. This not an expensive study by any government standards. $450,000 even on the city level, especially for a city like Tacoma with one of the largest ports in the US. Very, very doable thing to do for Vision Zero, which is, hey, let's get some nerds together, give them a little bit of money, couple of years, and see if they can figure out some ways to reduce deaths on the road. And these three people really just said, nah, that's a scam. That's going to make everybody super dependent on driving. It's literally 1984. They're trying to control your movement.
Could you imagine?
I don't understand even where the public transit, like I said, there's so much to unpack. First of all, who are the private interests? I would love to know, because I want to get in touch with them and ask them for donations to
Big bus for
Flyer
sure.
and Gillig, apparently.
The poor people. Oh no, they have to be reliant on a very affordable and safe
Canadian company, New Flyer International. They're trying to force everybody into a bus.
Jesus.
But I've read Vision Zero plans. I've even worked on one. Public transportation is not a big part of Vision Zero. It mainly has to do with pedestrians, biking, and driving. So I don't even know how he's tying that in. That's just such a weird... like the classic things in the Vision Zero plan, the base, and that's the thing too. The suggestions are always pretty similar because there are cities that have already achieved Vision Zero. So it's always like daylighting intersections, raised crosswalks, separated bike lanes on major corridors, increased lighting to prevent nighttime crashes. So like, how does that force people to ride the bus? Because there's more lighting at night, or because there's like better crosswalks? Like, I don't even know.
I honestly think it's just a dog whistle. Because
it's weird.
A lot of people, when they think of public transit, they go, ooh, scary. Like there was this great reel I saw the other day, and it was like, if people treated drivers like they do transit riders, it's like, oh, how'd you get here?
Yes.
Oh, we drove. Have you seen this, Ethan?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, hilarious. Like, oh my God, isn't that really dangerous? Yeah, it was so spot on, right? Because that's how people feel about this. And it's a story I think we talked about a while ago. This happened in Toronto where there was a stabbing on the TTC. And, you know, becomes this huge thing in news. And that is something that's newsworthy. It's something we don't want happening on public transit. But we act like it's so dangerous. A lot of people think it's so dangerous when reality is it's not. It's the opposite. It's driving that's dangerous. Public transit is so incredibly safe. And I
you're
think
more likely to, that's the thing. I think you're more, definitely, I know statistically, you're more likely to get into an accident driving on the freeway in LA than you are to be a victim of a crime riding the public transit. But whether you're more likely to feel uncomfortable on public transit versus driving, it's probably not in transit's favor at the moment. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Skitch said, had a good comment. VZ usually gives more money to the police too. That is correct. I've seen the VZ. Usually they have the 4 E's, which is the enforcement, education. I don't remember the other E's. There's other E's. But anyway, they give money to the police to do education. Yeah, engagement.
Education,
that's one of them.
Enforcement, engagement, and engineering.
Yeah, because we all know that posting a sign that says "Follow the law" makes everybody follow the law.
Don't speed.
It absolutely does.
Children live in this neighborhood.
I went to my neighborhood every year. Okay, we have a meeting in my neighborhood in Santa Barbara, and they have the best free cheese, which is why I always go. So I don't know who caters it, but they have this great cheese that I look forward to. Yeah. So I go every year. It's always in May. I'm also always the youngest guy there, which is kind of fun. But, you know, the police show up and the mayor and stuff. So anyway, the woman who gave the little speech, she was like, we were unable to get speed bumps for the main road through our neighborhood. And there was this, it was really interesting because there was this audible, like, sigh, you know, because even though most people in my neighborhood are, you know, very NIMBY-ish, based on the comments they post on Nextdoor and stuff, they want speed bumps because they don't like people speeding past their homes. And so instead, the city administrator, I think, said, but we can get one of those signs that says speed limit, and then this is how fast you're going, which I've not read data on how effective those actually are. I don't think they're better than infrastructure.
Well, we say paint is an infrastructure for bikes, and signs really aren't infrastructure for roads.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the reason we can't get speed bumps, you guys might be interested. The reason is that road, because my neighborhood was assigned mostly with cul-de-sacs and dead ends and roads that loop back onto the main road, which, to be fair, it's on a hill, so it was hard to put a grid over it. But that main road that people speed on is only 2 lanes, and it is considered an evacuation route. And so having speed bumps would mean, in the case of a big wildfire, everyone would be slowed down as they're evacuating, which honestly, and also the fire trucks might be slowed down on their way in. And I actually don't know what a good comeback to that argument is. I don't know if you guys could think of one.
I mean, that's a very complex issue, and it's something that needs to be dealt with, but I feel like that's a systemic problem. So when it comes to emergency services, I have friends who work for this fire department here in Vancouver, and I think it's a lot of protectionism, and it's a lot of union problems. Like, I'm a huge fan of unions. I'm a supporter of unions, but the problem with unions sometimes is that they fight so hard for their own interests that it negatively affects everybody else. So the problem with fire trucks, for example, is that they're too big. Okay. Not in the sense that they're too big and it's outstrips their usefulness. There's reasons why they're huge, but they don't need to be. And what happens a lot of times is they dictate what happens in the neighborhoods and how the neighborhoods are built that are going to make them more dangerous and more likely to need the fire trucks in the first place for crashes that happen. And that's like the self-fulfilling prophecy that happens.
Come on.
What's that?
It's called job security.
Job security. But that's how I feel like it is. And it's the same with police unions. You'll see it a lot of the time here in Vancouver right now. Holy, like why don't they want automated enforcement? Oh, I wonder why. Because it's about they're keeping their jobs. More people are speeding. That means they need people out there with their speed guns doing that work. And I feel like that's a problem, right? It doesn't help make the streets safer. it's just for their own interests. Anyway, that was my little diatribe.
I remember reading an article. I took it when I was at UCLA, and I took a really interesting transportation class. And we read this article about how there's a lot of these small cities in Texas along highways that have very low tax intake, so they need money. And so their police departments have quotas for how much they need to make through.
Yeah.
So like the city of Los Angeles gets 1% of its revenue from any kind of parking or driving related tickets. But these cities in Texas, it's like, I think one of them was 85% of their entire city budget comes from tickets.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
That's not just Texas. That's quite literally everywhere in the U.S.
Yeah.
Small towns, a lot of them just resort to, if they're on like a junction between like state routes or something like that are important, they will quite literally be just their entire tax revenue comes from that. There's actually a case in a small Florida town, I think it's called Stark, Florida, where they actually had to get rid of the city's police force and merge it in with the county because it got that bad within the city itself.
Holy.
Wow. Crazy. Yeah, maybe I'll find that article for the next podcast episode, because I remember there were some interesting details about how some of these cities, if the person didn't have money on them for the ticket, they would like confiscate the car and just leave the person standing on the side of the road. But I don't remember. It was like a few years ago that I read it, so I don't want to say any of the details incorrectly. But yeah, and then what's interesting as far as this emergency thing, I actually found a road widening project that I may be in favor of, but I would love to run it past you guys. Because obviously road widening projects, boo, lame, from aesthetic reasons even. It's a beautiful 2-lane road that goes through a canyon in an older neighborhood. But like many neighborhoods in my area, it is the only access route to the neighborhood. So I talked to a guy who I met, and he's like, oh, you do traffic engineering? I'm trying to widen the road. And I was like, uh-oh. He said, look, here's my pitch that I'm trying to get the fire department to sign on to. Because it's an emergency route, apparently the neighborhood hired a planning firm who did a study who said it would take like 5 hours for everyone to get out in the case of a fire. But if the road was wider, it would take less time. So what if they widened the road, but the extra road space was not used for more lanes of traffic? It was used for bike lanes. But then if there was a fire, people could drive along those shoulders because the road would be wider. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not against this road widening.
But then you have to consider at the end of the day, or with this situation too, if you're going to widen for bike lanes, great option. But then you can't have any sort of actual protection for the bike lane itself.
Right.
You'd have to have everything be some sort of flexi post at best.
Nobody likes those.
That is correct. I think in his mind and in the neighborhood's mind, it's definitely going to be paint. It's not that any of them are ever going to ride a bike. But so yeah, it would definitely be paint. And there's that weird interplay I see a lot in planning projects where emergency services sort of see the bike lane as their option, like their next bike, which is what happened on the 6th Street Viaduct that everyone was super angry. It was a $9 billion project to build one bridge in LA across the LA River. And with that money, and you're tearing down the old one and building a brand new one from scratch, why not put the bike lane behind a concrete barrier where the pedestrians are? And nobody really knew until about a month before it opened and the fences sort of came down that the bike lane, which had been shown in renderings as being on the other side of the concrete barrier, was actually just going to be protected with rubber curbing, black rubber curbing, which on this $9 billion bridge looks so cheap and stupid to have this like beautiful thing with rubber curbing. But anyway, and yeah, what ended up happening, one of the project engineers put on Twitter, which was like, yeah, emergency services, they see that bike lane as what they get to use in an emergency. What's funny, of course, at the end of the day is whether or not the bridge needed to be built at all was kind of proven from it being closed for like 5 years during construction, and it didn't cause traffic anywhere while it was closed. So maybe the whole thing should be pedestrian and bike only anyway.
Was that the 6th Street Viaduct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
is it the one with the giant like swirl like ascent?
Yeah. Yes. So there's an ascent, and then if you're on a bike, you actually then have to go into the more dangerous area on the roadway. There it is. Look at those stupid rubber protection. And look at what the pedestrians get. They're on the other side of this legit concrete barrier.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's pretty bad. And those aren't even tall flexi posts. Those are like, what, 2 or 3 feet high?
Yeah, they're stubbies. I talked to an engineer who told me now he likes to buy them in gray because sometimes because that same company that makes the white ones is now making gray ones, and they can look like concrete.
Just fool them to think it's going to hurt their car, and then that might work. Oh, so frustrating. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. God forbid we build one protected bike lane in this country. But, I mean, if you're going to go and build those bike lanes that, can actually have emergency vehicles go down them, cycle tracks would be a great option for that. And you could honestly still do actual protected concrete if you made the cycle track wide enough. And you'd have a great bike area for that. And you could even, end up preventing cars from going down this this, of course, would be some very expensive infrastructure, maybe for like big corridors in cities. Having a wide cycle track that could actually fit emergency vehicles, and even the potential for retractable bollards at each intersection.
Wait a minute, those are impossible.
What?
I was as shocked as everyone else when Nick made that the thumbnail, by the way. I was
Same.
I didn't know what to do. I don't know.
That's so funny.
I mean, you could literally time retractable bollards with emergency vehicles. Like,
you
It
can.
would not be that hard to do.
The only problem is that they're expensive. I looked at a retractable bollard project that my firm worked on to dig like the well for them and then have the hydraulics. If they're hydraulic, they're really expensive. You can have other kinds. But yeah, we're talking about, I can't remember exactly what the price tag was, but it's way more than you'd want it to be. It's like a few $100,000 for like a row of them.
Then it's impossible.
Yeah. It's economically. Yeah. I'm still looking for that moment. I did actually look through the footage, and I don't know, maybe she said it to me personally. Because I couldn't find it, or maybe I was looking under the wrong commission. But the last thing I want to do is spend my time looking through hours of public comment.
That's too much.
And like the AI, like that picks up that makes the transcript. It's not good enough to keyword search. Like if I put in bollard, it doesn't pick up words.
If you type in bow and then lard.
Yeah. Right, it's a guess.
I don't know if you've seen other cycle tracks, but a lot of them, where they're actually hamstrung by emergency vehicles, they'll put a flexi post in the middle. Like even if it has a concrete barrier, they'll just put a flexi post in the middle between the intersection. And then every delivery vehicle within, the area that needs to deliver something just drives over that and then parks in the cycle track and blocks it.
I saw a flexi post in Oakland when I was there in September that had been ground into a gray pancake.
Oh my God!
It was like I was taking pictures. I call them the fallen soldiers. All the flexi posts that have sacrificed. I'll bring a montage to show you guys.
They sacrifice themselves to help nobody, though.
To help, the cause. It's like the tomb of the unknown flexi posts. It was like they were fighting in Vietnam. It was kind of a useless conflict to begin with.
Yeah, I feel like what they're going to do is like the worst thing they're going to do is like knock over a cyclist. Like it's not going to save the car.
Like a flexi post is fine, but it has to be on top of a concrete structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have. I just think they're ugly, by the way. But we have a, because I like how in Amsterdam they're metal and they have like the city seal on them, which is really cool, the city crest. So we have on State Street a flexi post that if a fire truck needed to drive down the street, they could drive through them. They're these tall yellow ones. They're almost as tall as me. And the way that they attached them to the road was with a magnet, like a rare earth magnet. So that when the fire truck comes through, they could just, but the problem is when kids come by on e-bikes, they'll speed up to like, 25, 30 miles per hour on their illegal e-bikes. And they'll put out their hands and slap the flexi post off the ground. And it sounds almost like a shotgun. Like it's really loud because they're hollow. So it's like a boom. And then, I always go back. But I gotta say, it is really satisfying to pick them up and like zero them in onto the magnet. And then they just click into place. It's kind of fun, honestly.
That would, that sounds satisfying.
Yeah.
If not safe for people who need them. Or need proper bollards at least.
Like infrastructure is just so weird how we just don't build it here. I mean, like,
it's weird.
It makes so much sense, and at the same time, there's just like this visceral hatred for it that just has no reasoning behind it.
It's weird because it's not standardized. The key is like you can here in Santa Barbara. If I drove over to where some of our listeners live in Georgia, right? The yellow lines, the double yellows, it all looks exactly the same. The bike infrastructure, randomly unpredictable. Sometimes it's concrete surfaced, asphalt surfaced. Sometimes there's white lines on the edges. Sometimes there's a yellow line in the middle. Sometimes there's not. So I think that one of the things I thought in the Netherlands was great is like the standardization of the color scheme, even of it, that it's all red. It gives it this extra legitimacy almost.
It's a small country, though. I guess you could say like one state is about the same. What's the population of California?
38 million.
Yeah.
It's the same as Canada.
Yeah. I think the Netherlands, what is it, like 12 million or something?
I think we just need to work on one state.
Yeah.
New Jersey.
Okay. Why New Jersey?
I don't know. It just seems like it's the size of the Netherlands.
It is about, yeah. It is actually, yeah. I think the New York metro area is something around the same size as the Netherlands. Slightly smaller, actually, but a lot more people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got some stories here, Sully, I think.
Sure. I'll start with a couple quick hits, which I have organized here. Okay. So a little bit of transit news. On the last live podcast we did, we talked about the LA Metro K line. The last station is opening, the LAX station, which, Ethan, you're still planning on coming to the opening, right?
All booked, ready to go.
Amazing. So I'm going to try to be there too. So maybe we'll do a little recording together. So more news from LA Metro. The D line, which is the little stub, basically, that goes from downtown to Wilshire Western, for those who are in the know, is going to be closed from May 17th to July 25th. But it's going to be closed for very good reason, which is that they're actually connecting the tracks and then trying to run trains, I guess, from that old part of the D line to the brand new part of the D line, which they've been working on now for years. It's one of the only LA Metro projects that is both on time and on budget, or maybe a little bit. No, it's on time. There's still not an exact opening date for the stations that are going to open. So the line, it's another 9 miles, basically all the way across West LA, almost to the ocean, but not quite. And it's going to hit incredibly important major destinations, including the LACMA Museum sort of complex, Rodeo Drive, which is kind of world famous, right? So Beverly Hills is going to get a subway station. They didn't want it. They fought it, and they're getting it anyway, which I think is kind of funny. Then it's going to hit Century City, which is a huge job center. And finally, UCLA, which is predicted to be the busiest metro station outside New York once it opens. So those last areas out there, Rodeo Drive, UCLA, those are going to open hopefully by 2027 and 2028. But this initial segment, which will end at La Cienega Boulevard, which is a north-south street, will hopefully be open, it still says in this article, by the end of this year. So there's not an exact date, but it's going to be a huge deal. But in the meantime, there's going to be this over a month-long close, I guess, almost 2 months closure on the D-line, which I use the D-line to get to work every single day. So I'm going to have to figure out what the heck to do.
What's the bus that goes down Wilshire?
There is. It just gets stuck in the same traffic that everyone else gets stuck in, because there's no dedicated bus lane on that part of Wilshire.
Which is wild, because Wilshire's like 6 lanes the whole way.
Well, look, 6 lanes isn't enough to have a dedicated bus lane, okay?
Clearly not. Clearly not in Los Angeles.
No, there's a peak hour dedicated bus lane on parts of Wilshire, which feels like the cheapest version of a BRT. So
yeah, I don't get peak hour or bus lanes. People just park in them anyways.
Okay, you think peak hour bus lanes are bad? In Santa Barbara, we have 2 peak hour bike lanes that I've never seen enforced. Yeah, look at Nick's reaction to that.
What?
Yeah, so it's these, it's the area between the curb and the driving lane, and it is a bike lane between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. But the rest of the day, it's a parking lane.
That's ridiculous.
So
that is insane.
Would you like to actually see it? I can show you.
It's like, I just want to stick up that meme of that old guy. Like, hey, I need to bike during the middle of the day. But like, well, might as well die. Like,
yeah, it's
crazy that these aren't enforced either, because like, if you just think about it, that's like a money printer for the police.
It's literally designed to make money. Like, that is cash.
It's probably designed for a cop to go, or a parking enforcement to go around at like 5:01 and catch 27 cars still parked there where everybody's trying to run out 5 minutes later, and see the person writing the ticket right there, and make the city like a good $1,000 in one little swing.
So here's the problem, guys, with that. you thought the housing crisis wasn't going to come up in this episode? We don't have enough police officers because they can't live here. So our parking enforcement division was actually like put on hold and canceled for the last 2 years. So,
oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, not obviously traffic violations, but like, there was no one driving around. So all of the 15-minute zones, all the signage. See, you had to be in the know though, because like obviously if you're a tourist coming into town, you don't know that. But like if you live here, yeah, like it was in the news. Like there is literally no one coming around to check. They finally got someone. I guess the derogative term is meter maid, but we don't have meters because of course we don't charge for parking in Santa Barbara either. But yeah, they finally got it, and it's such a wacky looking car. It has like 25 cameras on it facing every direction, and they have a limited route because I think the person who does it isn't even available all the time. So anyway, here's the bike symbol. Which
oh my gosh!
There's your little bike symbol. Here is the bike lane. Here's what it says. Let's see. What is the... So wait, is that the sign? No, is that the sign that explains that it's a peak hour bike lane? Oh, and of course the weather has changed here now. I think this must be the sign that says it.
Yeah, you went from May to September.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah. So it's only a morning peak hour bike lane. So from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., it's a bike lane. But not the rest of the day.
Is there a bike lane on the other side of the street, or is it a one way?
So okay, here's actually what's interesting. The other street that's one way would be over here. So you think this is the evening one? If you had to bet,
or is it 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning?
Did they really do that? That would be so silly. Let's see. I don't see any striping at all here, so that's just not helpful.
But I mean, like, it would make sense, like if you're gonna.
Oh wait, it says no parking 1 to 3. Is that what that says? That must be for street sweeping then.
That's got to be for like street sweeping or something.
Yeah. So I guess yes. If you want to bike in the morning down this street, you probably can't because people are parked there. To be honest, but. Yeah, this sign, the camera's like completely blown out, so who knows what that says. But I can go down there and report back to you, because this is, 5 minutes from me.
Please let us know.
I will let you know. They did do some very nice bike infrastructure here, which I wonder if it shows up, because it is brand new, so I might as well show you. No. They did a bike bulb out for people to wait at here. But anyway... So Nick, have you ever seen a peak hour bike lane, or is that your first?
I've never heard of that. That's insane.
Yeah,
I guess you could technically say like the bus lanes here in Vancouver allow bikes, which are peak hour BRT lanes, not everywhere, but some places. So I guess, but like nobody rides the bike there. It's a terrible place to ride your bike.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. The compromise they're making in Culver City, because they're taking out the bike lanes. But they're keeping the dedicated bus lane with the Move Culver City project, which I think I've mentioned before.
Yeah.
So they're making it bike, which is like
Nobody
terrifying if the bus comes up behind you.
Nobody's riding there. I'm not going to ride there. I'm a grown-ass man. No, thank you.
No.
I'm good.
This also actually is a great example of, I love bulb outs, obviously, but my problem with bulb outs is right now, because of the non-standardization of bike lanes that we talked about, bulb outs are really only being designed for pedestrian safety and not bike safety, which should not be in conflict with each other. Unfortunately, these bulb outs going in, you can see if you're a cyclist and you're in even assuming if it was a good bike lane, you actually have to come into the driving lane, try and merge with cars who probably don't see you, and then swing back around into the bike lane. So the bike lane really, there should be, in the bulb out, it would be a much better design. And these are all over town now. It actually makes it almost worse to be a bicyclist. Obviously,
I think I've seen the design with the bike lanes in there. It's like the bike lane kind of turns a little bit more like into the street to kind of give more room for like the pedestrians waiting to cross in the bulb out.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, that's the better design. But so let's see. I'm going to go now. So I think we can go to the next story if you guys are up for it. Let me stop screen sharing here.
Let's go.
Okay, you guys. Are you guys ready to stay in Santa Barbara? Am I just...
Yes.
Am I just such an exciting Santa Barbarian? That's what I think it's called.
I love that.
I'm a Santa Barbarian.
Oh my God. No,
Okay.
we used to only get Calgary news from Alex, so now we get to have Santa Barbara news from you.
Yeah.
Because hopefully at some point soon I'll be running for city council or something. So it'll be kind of will bring the listener audience along on that journey. So
no, we've got another one leaving us for a city council.
Not yet. This is like at least 2 years out, probably. But okay, so the headline of the article I want to share with you guys from the local news, it's an extinction level event. Okay. What is this extinction level event? Basically, what I've been told by people at the city and by the various news that has covered this, but I do want to mention I've actually talked to people at the city about this. The state of California wants to streamline housing. And they don't like cities having super discretionary reviews. They want things to be more ministerial. And so when we got our city housing element approved a couple of years ago, there were a couple caveats with that, which is that the way that you deal with creeks is too discretionary. So if anyone wants to build anything and they have a creek going through their property, the city would send someone out, on a parcel by parcel basis, make that decision. So the city said, okay, we'll write a creek ordinance that basically, every creek will have the exact same rule. All the lots adjoining all the creeks will have the same rule governing them. So the rule they came up with is if you are within 50 feet of a creek, you cannot do anything at all. I mean, even standing there and breathing seems like it would be a problem. So the only thing you're allowed to do within 50 feet of a creek is plant native species. So you can't even plant, a tomato plant, an orange tree, right? Those are not from California. So you can plant native species. Now, if we were designing a community from scratch, this might not be unreasonable. The problem is we have urban creeks. One of them goes like through downtown. So there are buildings literally, the creek is in like a stone basin. And so there are buildings right up against that, which basically means all of those buildings are now grandfathered in pre-ordinance. But if any of them burn down, or even if you wanted to do a remodel, good luck, right? You wouldn't be able to rebuild. You wouldn't be able to change your property. Or if you wanted to build an ADU in your backyard, but your entire backyard is now in this 50-foot setback, you can't build an ADU, which technically downzones the land, which goes against the initial intent. And so everyone is freaking out about this whole thing because they've also defined random like canyons as creeks too, even that don't have water running in them regularly. And so the community, again, which a really interesting political alliance that I see is people who you'd think would be complete NIMBYs who are anti-housing are freaking out because they also want to be able to build patios, or remodel their homes. And so that's sort of the strange political alliance. So with my Strong Towns group, we're actually trying to use this as sort of our way of making the alliance with the homeowners to be, and also be pro-housing. So anyway, that's the story.
That's interesting because, well, I think it's important that we, try to preserve our creeks and our natural areas, but there's ways that we can do this to integrate the urban landscape with it and not just be like, no, nothing near it, nothing nearby. Can't even, like you said, can't even breathe on it. Get away. But like we're seeing here in Vancouver where they're revitalizing old creeks that were filled in and covered up. And they're doing it in a way that's actually useful to the neighborhood, which I think is fantastic. But like, what do you got here?
This is one of the maps. So yeah, you can see that like entire lots are now like you wouldn't be able to build a house there, basically.
See ya.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So it's kind of a weird. So this is one of the articles, and yeah, you can see what a lot of these creeks look like. They're not really like impressive. It's California, there's not much going on in there.
Even if you were trying to protect like riparian habitats and creeks, I mean, you're gonna need a bigger area than 50 feet for a watershed.
Yeah, what I found on one of the historic maps the city put out is that the entire downtown used to be a floodplain for the biggest creek is Mission Creek. Cool thing about Mission Creek actually is that there's a little dam up in the mountains that the missionaries built back in 1795 that's still there. But that's because it's the only creek that flows year-round, and it goes through downtown. So yeah, you can see a couple pictures. Yeah, you can see it's highly urbanized. So
it looks really lovely for some reason. This is like
Yeah.
Looking really nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, like this structure, illegal, gone, you know, whatever that is. But yeah, no, our creeks are lovely because unlike in LA, there's only one spot, I think, in all of Santa Barbara where it's in a concrete basin. There's a lot of these stone basins, which even though they destroy the habitat kind of almost just as much, they look pleasant because it looks handmade. You know, it's a stone feature instead of a concrete one. But yeah, and like, look, I talked to the city councilor, one of the guys who comes to the Strong Towns meeting. He's fantastic, Councilman Oscar Gutierrez, and he said the problem is the city. You know, there are flood zones. Like once every 50 years, this creek is going to flood all of these yards and destroy the homes, and then the city has to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So they have that thought process on their side as well.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem in a lot of places. That's not even just when it comes to actual natural disasters, but just the way we treat the earth in general. I'm thinking like in Alberta with, like Aaron talked about a while ago when he was on the show. When it comes to oil sands and the way that we destroy these areas, and we just like, who's going to deal with it later? Like, I don't know, somebody else, not us. But
dude, I looked up oil sands after that. I was like, my jaw dropped. That is the craziest land. What was that like being out there?
It's not great. Didn't love it. I was depressed.
Yeah,
I didn't like it. Not for me. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a wild.
What do you mean you didn't like being out in the, dystopian industrial environment
with nothing to do for 12 hours on end for 3 to 4 weeks at a time? Anyway, let's move on from that.
Yeah.
We've got some listener mail here.
We do have some listener mail.
Yeah, do you want to read this one, Ethan?
Yeah, I'll read this first one. This comes from I'm so sorry if I mispronounced her name, Antoine Westhoff, and this was in response to Sully's conversation with Peter Norton. And the comment is, "This was a very interesting conversation. I had so many thoughts to share while listening. Where I live, jaywalking is not a thing. Streets are for people. The motorist is always the liable street user in case of accidents. Thank you very much for sharing."
So is the question to guess where they live? Because I'd love to go there.
Yeah. I would guess it's in Europe.
Definitely.
That's my guess.
I'm going to guess, honestly, probably somewhere in Austria, just with a last name like that.
Okay.
Austria?
Oh, I didn't know the name. What's the name?
It's
Antoine Westhoff.
Antoine West, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going off last name here.
Yeah. That was a really good conversation.
First name's got me thinking France, though, so.
Yeah. Again, if you haven't listened to it, go check it out.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys.
Maybe they're Swiss?
I recorded it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And of course, it went on a long time, but I used all that information in my video. But yeah, there were so many extra details he provided in that conversation. And also just about other random stuff. Like, I love the whole thing we talked about at the beginning with the automated vehicles and everything. I mean, he's just a really smart guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But thanks for listening to the whole thing, Nick. That's very nice of you.
Well, okay. The thing that shocked me about that the most when he was talking about jaywalking, like Antoine brought up, was the fact that the police were were they told to, or they were like basically pressured to shame people instead of actually arresting people for crossing the street where they're quote not supposed to, and would whistle and point at people on the busy street if they tried to jaywalk across the street where there wasn't a marked crossing, and then even pick up women, go and pick them up and move them back onto the sidewalk, which is just like, what the mother? Oh my! Can you imagine that happening today?
Not to mention,
holy.
The term jaywalking was fully created just to basically call people idiots.
Yeah.
Like a common J, that was just like a common idiot.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I went back and the original meaning of that, the common J, was like a guy who would just sort of stand around, not know what to do. So it had nothing to do with like crossing a street or anything. And then you saw like the LA Times was calling people J drivers. Like, okay, there's idiot drivers too, which I loved. But yeah, so and some of the newspaper articles I included in my video that he sent me were like, these women who were getting picked up were like slapping the cops back, which is hilarious. Or in one point that a couple of women like rushed a cop and knocked him over in the road.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Sweep the leg.
It was wild. And so one of them, the article was crazy. Okay, so this young woman in her 20s, slapped a cop, goes to court, and the judge said that needed a spanking.
Oh my God.
And she's like in her 20s. Yeah.
Oh,
you need a spanking, but you're too something about. And then he commented on how pretty she was. It was just like very weird.
This is like turning into one of those smut novels. Oh my God. Somebody's going to start off that. There's probably already a book written like this.
But I think the craziest part of my biggest takeaway was how much of this history is like just forgotten. You know, it all sort of transpired in a few months, maybe over a year. And then, you know, much bigger things happened in the 20s and 30s. So, and anyone, you know, imagine having a grandparent, though, who was alive at the time, like, you know, 30, 40 years ago, they might have brought it up. But like that, even the thing with where some women reacted with doing like in intersections with all the baby carriages in a big circle and creating a place for the kids to play, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Like that's just kind of forgotten history.
It is. We need to remember. We need to, because it's really important to see the dichotomy, but also history repeating itself when something new comes around and how people treat it. I'm thinking of e-bikes and scooters right now.
Oh, totally.
That's how we saw cars back in the day. Here's a comment in the chat. By the way, you can join our Patreon for as little as how much?
$1.
$1. You can join the Discord to get priority access to us, I guess.
If you are an American, be aware, though, there is now a $7 tariff to become a patron.
Yeah. So, Austin says here in the chat, jaywalking is technically not illegal in Canada, but many municipalities have bylaws against it, and usually a low fine like $50. So I got a little story here. The first day I moved to Vancouver, almost 8 years ago, I went to Gastown to meet up with a friend who I worked with in the oil sands. He lived here in Vancouver. And on my way home, it was late night. I might have had a couple of beverages, and I would just walk home. It was like, sure, let's walk home. It took about, I don't know, an hour. It's like 1 a.m. And I got to a busy street called Broadway. It's where the new subway extension's being built right now. And I just looked both ways, and I just started crossing the street. And then around a corner, I see a car coming with lights. So I just like jog across the street. And then I hear, whoop, whoop. It's a police car. And then he comes and stops me to question me what's going on. And I thought I was going to get a ticket for jaywalking. Not what happened. He just saw me running, was like, oh, suspicious man running at night. But it was all fine. He's like, where do you live? I was like, that way. I don't know the address. We just moved in. I don't even know. It was fine. It was fine.
Wow. You were considered suspicious. Yeah, I guess you're a very suspicious man.
I guess so. Yeah.
This suspicious guy here.
Yeah. Yeah.
My friend actually got a ticket once, not for jaywalking, but for using the crosswalk on his bike. Which you're not allowed to do. No, he wasn't walking it. Like he was, you know, on the bike lane, and then the light turned green, and rather than being in the roadway where people were trying to turn, he just went and used the cross. Which I don't understand. Why is this illegal? And what's crazy is in most places in Southern California, this was the point I made in an article I wrote a few months ago about riding on the sidewalk. There aren't many pedestrians. There just aren't. So why is this such a problem?
It's not a problem, and it shouldn't be. I know, like in San Francisco, when they have the the LPIs, leading pedestrian intervals, bikes are allowed to go during those. And that's the way it should be. It's safer. I do it, even though it's not technically legal here in Vancouver. I don't care. I'm going to keep myself safe.
Yeah, that's what's important.
Give me a ticket. Yeah. That's just great content.
Also, think about it. You're a bike. You've got an extra 30 to 70 pounds of metal on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a little bit extra protection for the pedestrian to the right of you.
Just a little bit. Yeah, we got another one
extra meat shield for them.
Yeah, from D-Man. This is our last questions. 2 questions from D-Man in our Patreon. Whoa there, buddy, getting greedy. Number 1, maybe this is for Ethan. Have you ever seen or heard of a 3-lane BRT? Bus rapid transit. I personally haven't seen one, although I think it would be truly game-changing. BRT with express routes would be phenomenal. Is he asking for one more lane, bro, for buses?
One more lane. Yeah, maybe. I mean, like, just a passing lane or an express lane, but I think, I'm not too certain here, don't quote me on it. I know that there are some busways that have, like, little peel-offs on the side for, you know, bus stops, but not, like, fully dedicated lanes for, you know, an extra third lane or something like that for, you know, BRT buses, but some of them, I believe the one in Connecticut in Hartford, I can't remember the name of it right now, has them. But other than that, maybe the one in Pittsburgh that's not really BRT but is a busway. Like I think that one's called the MLK busway or something like that. But I think they have like little like station like peel offs, like turn-ins, but not like actual like bus, like full on like 3 or 4 lane, BRT corridors. Because I mean, at that point, you just build a train for that capacity.
Yeah, honestly.
I think I've seen it outside the U.S. Not personally. I think I've seen a picture, probably in South America, and maybe the BRT system in Jakarta is where I saw it. But I feel like I definitely saw pictures in a Spanish-speaking country because I remember the headings on the bus were in Spanish, so it may have been in Mexico.
Colombia, maybe like the Transmilenio,
Yeah, or maybe the one in Brazil, in southern Brazil. Maybe it was Portuguese. Yes, I know they don't speak Spanish there. I was
You were about to get called out so hard in the comments.
Exactly.
It's funny. It is interesting seeing those countries like Colombia, especially like in Bogota, the limits of BRT really being kicked up into high gear and really seeing like, oh, maybe we actually do need to build rail.
Right.
Because you'll see these buses, these BRT buses that run like every 3 to 5 minutes during rush hour, and they're absolutely jam packed with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like you said, at that point, build a train. Come on.
Yeah.
More capacity. We have one more question here from D-Man. Is there any part of aspects of urbanism you think Europe can learn from America? If so, what? I don't know. Sully, you said you might have a thought on this.
Okay, at first I was really struggling because I got to be honest. There are some things about America that are better than Europe, in my opinion, but urbanism, it's hard. The one I could think of was, and this is arguable, by the way, so I'd love your guys' take on this. Okay, ADA compliance. I think America has been at the forefront of inclusive infrastructure. What?
What is that for people who don't know?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think all the way back in the 90s, under President Clinton, we started regulating structures to be accessible for people in wheelchairs. That's why there's ramps everywhere, disabled parking spots, elevators, wide doors, bathrooms that have bars next to the toilets so that people can lower themselves in from a wheelchair or if they have some other kind of disability. I think we've been good at that. And traveling to Europe with someone in my family who has a disability, it's sometimes very, very difficult if the bathroom is up or down a staircase. Although a lot of the times it's because it's in a really old building. So I don't know what the modern laws dictate in places like that. But yeah, like, riding the London Underground, many of the stations, if you're in a wheelchair, good luck, and we're really good too with like, I feel like each year there's you probably notice in your town, all the pedestrian push buttons are different because they're constantly trying to make them more inclusive. So they went from being those thumb buttons, which if people don't have their fingers or if they're not very good at using them, they went to the big round ones. And then they became flat round ones that make a beep. So a blind person knows where they are. They can hear where the button is and press that. And now they have gotten to the point where they talk, right? They say wait, and they tell you in San Luis Obispo, they put new ones in, which actually tell you what street you're on.
Wait so they say, cross Burnside.
Yes. And of course, I don't know, Ethan, if you were because you smiled. Of course, they were recently hacked to talk in Jeff Bezos' voice.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know who did that, but that was absolutely hilarious. Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg's voices were coming out of pedestrian signals.
It would be really. Could you imagine? There was the one, the Bezos hacked one was in Seattle, and it was playing Bo Burnham's Jeffrey Bezos song in the background, and it was like, hey, it's what's his name again? Why am I Jeffrey Bezos? Hey, it's Jeffrey Bezos. Imagine how much it would suck if Amazon wasn't in downtown Seattle. Imagine if all the cool people came back here and there wasn't all the tech corporate stuff. Imagine how much that would suck.
Jeffrey Bezos.
Yeah,
Bezos.
And you can imagine how much it would suck if you taxed the rich was the other one.
Yeah. Then there was also the Elon one in San Jose.
Can I just sidetrack for a minute?
Yes.
Bo Burnham's special Inside was so good. I mean, he was a product of the time, but man, that was so good. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, amazing. Loved it.
I have not.
Sorry.
No, that's good. But yeah, so okay, the reason I said it's arguable with the ADA stuff is on the one hand, yes, it's great to be inclusive. I'm not saying it's not. But recently I started thinking, do some ADA requirements also ruin urbanism a little bit? In the sense that, especially within buildings, like some of our favorite spaces, like in LA, the Grand Central Market, right, which is this crazy put together over time, and also like the farmers market, all these street vendors and everything all kind of packed into one area, which is really neat. Totally not ADA compliant, right? There's old staircases everywhere. The aisles aren't wide enough. The bathroom isn't accessible but then sometimes when you're in new buildings that have the ADA compliance, a lot of that takes up a lot of room. So like in a very small store, if you have to have an ADA compliant bathroom, it can take up a lot of room. I remember talking to an architect who told me that he designed a building and none of the units could have disposals in them because people in wheelchairs wouldn't be able to reach the disposal button or whatever. And I was like, I don't know. So maybe they've gone too far, as with many things. I'm not sure, but it's definitely something America's good at.
That's a fantastic answer. I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm struggling to think of something, but like, it's also hard because I haven't been to Europe, so it's really kind of little bit of an interesting question to pose. But I mean,
whoa, when are you going, dude? That's crazy.
Who knows?
Wow.
He's on the West Coast. We all are, I guess, but Asia's closer. Let's just say that.
That is true. It's about halfway either way. It's like 8 hours to either one.
Is it?
Yeah.
But I think it's true, still actually. Cheaper. Europe is cheaper to go to. I think the tickets.
Cheaper.
Yeah.
It depends on where you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, like
Southeast Asia is really cheap when you're there.
True.
Yeah, once you get there.
When you get to, you're like, I'm going to go see the Swiss trains. You're like, I can't afford to ride the trains.
No.
And then you're like, oh, wow, Japan, the flights are cheaper, the cheapest in Asia. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, my gosh. How much am I spending on a pod hotel?
It is relatively affordable in Japan, actually, right now. Especially with the USD, I'm sure would be fantastic. I went there with Canadian dollars. It was pretty good compared to what it used to be. Yeah, their yen has gone way down.
And by the way, you're not joking about I've been the weird. It was so weird being in Switzerland. It was like I couldn't afford a Subway sandwich. It was so.
Yeah.
I went to Burger King and I was like, I can't believe I'm going to Burger King in Europe, dude. A single burger with fries was $23.
Yeah, I remember my wife and I went there to Zurich for just a day at the end of our hike in Chamonix, and we went to a restaurant and looked at the menu and like, nope. And then we just went to a grocery store and still spent a lot of money to just grab some stuff to bring to the park and eat in the park.
That's what I did the whole time I was there. And then we went over to France, and of course it's nothing. By the way, the one other thing I can think of with urbanism being better in America, and maybe it's because it's worse here, but I feel like the grassroots thing here, like with strong towns groups and advocacy pro bike groups, I don't know if it's as big of a thing there. Maybe they don't need it because everything's already so great.
Fish in an ocean,
Maybe.
But I mean, I haven't heard about it, so I don't know if it's as big of a thing. But I think we are good at it. I think nowadays, right, it's growing a lot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
we're sauced up with the movements,
Yeah, that's what America's good at in general. I think movements, protests, change making.
Better than the French.
Oof, that's a good. They will protest over their baguette being 5 minutes late out of the oven. So I don't really know. Yeah, they're good at it too. There's no question.
Yeah.
I mean, quite literally, look at what Paris has done in the past decade.
Excellent work. Excellent work. And more's being done. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
What time are we at? Okay. I've got one thing to talk about, if that's okay, guys, if you'll indulge me for a few minutes here. This is kind of, I wanted at the end of the show for people who actually listen to the show. I did release a video recently, and it was one kind of off the cuff ish. And it was about an incident here that happened in Vancouver, the Lapu Lapu Festival. A man drove a car and killed 11 people and injured many more. So you can go watch the video. I'm going to tell you a little bit what that's about. So the point I wanted to get across in the video was that there are many factors that lead up to something like that. And ones that are being talked about: mental health, police preparedness, and personal responsibility behind the wheel. But the factors that we continue to ignore are the facts that cars have gotten too big and too powerful, and they're far too easy to acquire. And the fact that our infrastructure not only makes it easier for things like this to happen, but also enables far more casualties as a matter of it's just regular operation. And if we want to make changes that will not only make attacks like this less likely, but will also have the other effect of these unintentional casualties to reduce as well on our streets. So I was very apprehensive about posting this. I talked to my wife about it. I talked to my neighbors who are into urbanism and safe streets before I actually recorded it, because I was very nervous about recording it and posting it, because I knew it would be somewhat controversial. And I knew it would be probably misinterpreted. And that's definitely what happened. It's a complex issue. And even though I chose my words very carefully, not to say that I'm very good at that, I did choose my words carefully when talking about this and try to be as concise as possible. It was still somewhat rushed. And yeah, like I said, it was open for interpretation in some ways. And that's what happened. So at least in a few cases. So this was personal to me in a sense. Nobody I knew got injured or killed, thank God. But the friend I was with, who I talked about at the beginning of the video, we were watching hockey. His partner, she's Filipino, and she happened to be there. And thankfully, she left just 10 minutes before the incident happened. So I was like, because we were talking, he's like, what the fuck? He was texting with her. I was like, thank God she wasn't there. But a lot of people were affected by this. I actually lost subscribers for the first time on my channel after posting this. I think I lost like 30 subscribers in 2 days or something, which isn't a lot, but I was still like, yeah, kind of makes sense. But anyway, a common comment I saw a few times there on that video was that I have lost the plot, and infrastructure won't stop things like this from happening. Because I mentioned infrastructure like bollards and stuff like that. Retractable bollards.
Impossible.
Which isn't the point. And it's not as simple as saying, hey, bollards or traffic calming will prevent this from happening. That's not what I was saying, and that's not what I believe. I was saying that's a point we should start from. And what I was really trying to say is that we need a societal shift, like a real investment into the infrastructure that will encourage a change in a way that we just get around our cities, and will make it less likely that a person will even have access to a car, let alone one so big and overpowered in the first place. And it's about increasing the complexities of those systems and bolstering the layers and redundancies to help prevent these things from happening. I'm not saying, hey, let's put up some traffic calming. Bob is your uncle. This wouldn't have happened, and they would have not. There's no possibility this person could have gotten to the street and hurt people. I'm talking about something that's going to take a generation if we attack it and take it seriously to really get to this point. But we got to start somewhere, and that's what I was trying to say. So it felt a bit nitpicky when people said that, because I'm like, I could just be like, yeah, and investing in our mental health isn't going to fix it either. Like, people are going to slip through the cracks. Like, it's about trying to attack this from different angles. It's about harm reduction in the pursuit of eradication. And what's the old saying? Perfect is the enemy of good. And that's what I try to come back to. So, yeah. What else do I have to say about this? Oh, yeah. You already said it. And this is something we wanted to talk about, a couple weeks after you had mentioned your story 2 weeks ago about retractable bollards being impossible. Yeah,
they're impossible.
They're not. Just they are very expensive.
That's what she told me. No, I thought that was an amazing video. I'm sure it took courage to post it. And I'm sorry you lost subscribers. And I think also people who said the infrastructure point, they ignored that you also mentioned the size of cars, which I would I just want to add, the only thing I have to add is not only have the cars gotten bigger and heavier, but for no reason other than aesthetics, right? Not Just Bikes did a video on this. The cars that are bigger and heavier do not carry more than cars 30 years ago that were smaller. In fact, many of them have less trunk space, less pickup bed space, and have worse mileage. So you can't even, other than they look cool, there isn't a reason driving this. And there's simple, at least in America, simple legislation that would reverse that trend with some loophole about what counts as a truck and what doesn't. And so
I think, we might have shared that, was it a USPS truck? A new USPS truck that's like, it actually, this is what a car looks like when it actually considers the safety of people outside of it. Mm-hmm. It looks fucking ugly, but that's not the point. It's, it's to be safe and usable, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I thought you made a great, and you're making a great point even with the infrastructure, because it's like in cities where people are much less likely to own a car in the first place, it's less likely to happen just overall.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, that's my little extra thing I wanted to say about that, because that's just being, making stuff on YouTube. You're going to get comments that just make your eyes roll a little bit. Like, come on, man.
Especially,
come on, man. Shorts. Did you even watch the whole video? Even, like, anyway.
Oh, if you make shorts, it's even worse.
Oh God, it's a nightmare. I just try to post and ghost, but there's that thing in the back of your brain. It's like, oh, just take a look, just take a peek, and then you read it and you're like, I shouldn't be here. Anyway, is there anything else we need to talk about here, guys, on the show? Nope.
Doesn't look
crickets.
Like it. Other than
all right,
our wonderful outro.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into our show today and watching some Radio Free Urbanism, where we talk about urbanism
and stuff.
Perfect. I want to thank everybody who watched this, especially our patrons who are in the live chat today. I know I saw Austin there. Unfortunately, all of my live chats wiped out because my internet disconnected. But I want to thank all of our patrons that we have. And if you want to support the channel, get access to these live shows, some other exclusive stuff that we have as well, too, you can access that and support the channel for just how much, Sully?
$1.
$1 a month to support the channel. Folks, thank you so much for watching this. Sully, where can the good people find you?
Sullyville, and that's on every platform.
Every platform.
Everything.
Good to
even
know.
everything.
Good to know. Nick, where
every platform, even the overturned apple crate in the park. I stand on that thing all the time.
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Nick Fedor. My name is Nick Laporte. And Ethan, where can the good people find you?
People can find me on my wonderful account, Climate and Transit, on every single platform. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Radio Free Urbanism. It's always a blast to film this thing with the wonderful people. And as always, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
2 feet fun.